I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Canon. We've been Disney fans our entire lives. And now, as childless adults, we're undertaking a journey through the media that shaped our lives.
Trying to find out if what made them special is still there.
We are
Rewatching the Magic. Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
We're going back in, aren't we?
Oh, back to the grid.
Back to
I'm
the
so
grid.
scared.
Maybe this time it'll make more sense than the last movie did?
Please give us plot. That's all we ask.
Last week we reviewed the 80s classic Tron. 20 years later, they did a sequel, Tron Legacy. And Kiki, we actually have a guest with us this week.
Yes, I did not feel safe going into the grid alone. We needed our own version of Tron, and so would our version of Tron like to introduce himself now, please?
Greetings, programs. My name's Adam Liebreich-Johnsen, and I am a longtime friend of Kiki, and also a huge fan of Tron, both the original film, which I would argue does have plot, and Tron Legacy, which I feel is criminally underrated.
Yes, and prior to Tuesday and I starting this podcast, Adam and I were going to do an entire Tron-centric podcast, and unfortunately, as we were working out the details, someone beat us to the punch. So this is kind of our take two of our Tron podcasting desires.
Also, by pure coincidence, I'm going to be on that podcast this week as well.
Ah, well, thank them for stealing our idea. All right. So let's get to our background information on this. Like you said, it took us 20 years. How did we get there?
Tron becoming a cult classic, pretty much. And it's just the popularity, okay, let's do a sequel. Adam, you want to give us a little bit more info on that?
Well, it's about 28 years, right? Because 1982 to 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie's 10 years old.
Yeah.
Don't remind me.
I keep forgetting that time passes like that. Like, I still think, 2 or 3 years ago was 2000, and it's 20 years now.
I remember when the rumors were flying about a sequel to Tron, and I didn't believe it at first because, I'd always been a fan of the original because my father worked on it, so it was kind of always in our family zeitgeist.
Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about that family connection?
My father has worked in entertainment as long as I've been around. He's mainly been an audio guy. He did post-production sound design and mixing for Tron and a bunch of other films and theme park productions and a bunch of other stuff. But for Tron specifically, he was sound design and post-production sound mixing.
Awesome. So when did you first start hearing about the sequel rumors?
I think it was Comic-Con a few years before the movie came out. I think they announced it at San Diego Comic-Con, and the way they did it was with an ARG type thing, an alternate reality game that culminated in actual Comic-Con goers discovering a replica of Flynn's Arcade set up in a bar in downtown San Diego.
That sounds awesome, and I hate that I am never able to go to anything like that.
Yeah, it basically wound up being just a few of the con-goers who solved all the puzzles, and they found a key and a token that led to Flynn's Arcade.
Nice.
And so that was the first official announcement at that. I think that was the 2008 or 2009 Comic-Con.
Then there was the
2008. Yeah, was that according to Wiki, which is the sum of all human knowledge.
It is on the whole more accurate than Britannica.
Yeah.
So then there was that teaser trailer that came out, which had nothing. That they filmed the teaser trailer before they even filmed the movie, which was a lightcycle battle. As you saw, we watched that teaser trailer earlier today, and it's for what it is actually pretty good. because you have the character of Clue versus another user, or another program in the light cycle battle as Kevin Flynn is watching the whole proceedings. Obviously, the scene was never used in the film, but it was just to say, hey, we got Jeff Bridges back for the sequel.
Yeah.
Really, I would not have wanted to see this movie without Jeff Bridges.
Or Bruce Boxleitner.
Yeah.
They very much underused him for this film, but I would have rioted in the streets as a one-person riot had Bruce Boxleitner not been in. Bruce Boxleitner was such a huge part of my childhood that's how I found Tron in the first place, was already being a fan of his work. And then, all the way through, I think I found him because of Scarecrow and Mrs. King. My mother was incredibly into that show as a little child. That came out a couple of years after Tron, in the late 80s, mid to late 80s somewhere. And he became a huge part of my week, watching that show with my mother and hear her talking about it. And after she passed, I was kind of like, hey, she was really into this guy. I should see what else he did. And I was growing an interest in sci-fi, and there was a weird Disney sci-fi movie he'd done, and that's kind of how I found Tron, I think.
And I was similarly a fan of Bruce Boxleitner from, I think, partially from Tron, and then it took me a while to make the connection between him and Captain Sheridan on Babylon 5, which is one of my all-time favorite shows, and then it clicked in me like, oh, hey, that's the same guy.
Yeah.
Which is weird because he's a very distinctive-looking generic white guy.
Yeah, for all his generic white guyness, there is nobody who looks like Bruce Boxleitner. It's very strange. He has that like clean-cut, good-looking Hollywood leading man thing, but there's also something just slightly different enough about him that you always kind of go, "Oh, that guy." So, but honestly, in to be fair, it was a good 15 years between Tron and him starting on Babylon 5, so.
Yep. Also, Peter Jurasik, one of my favorite people on Earth.
Peter Jurasik is amazing. The few times that I've gotten to interact with him, he has been nothing but just the absolute best to me, so, yeah.
And yeah, those two are the only actors from the original film to show up here. But it's none of the other actors from the film came back.
I was very curious. Does anybody know why Laura does not show up?
No idea.
I think she may be retired from acting.
Okay.
I mean, there was a big thing that they wanted her to be in. A lot of fans wanted her to be in the movie, but she was never contacted. She did some promotional stuff after the film was made. Like, she was at the premiere, and she did a fake NCOM press conference with Boxleitner as Adam Bradley, and that was about it. Yeah,
I believe that was part of the Flynn Lives ARG, which was another ARG they did up to the release of the movie, which I was a big fan of, and I have a lot of the merchandise they would just send out for free for solving puzzles from that game.
And this movie, awesome. they did a lot for this, because I don't remember. I think you were there with me, Kiki. We went to like a Rift Tracks thing, and in the same theater, they were showing like the first 10 minutes of Tron Legacy. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do.
They were giving out posters, and we stole some posters. I don't have my poster anymore.
I don't have it either, I don't think. I don't know what happened to that one, but it was... I think
you might have lost it in the move.
Yeah, I lost so much when I left Chicago in the move. But yeah, I do remember how thrilled we were to see any kind of Tron stuff. We didn't really talk about what a big cultural force Tron became in that intervening 28 years. But it was absolutely inescapable in the kind of geek community. I'm not sure how much it really went over into the general consciousness. I think it's one of those things that people remember it as that weird movie with people in light-up jumpsuits. But in the geek community, it's really the thing. I mean, if you go to sci-fi conventions and stuff like that, Tron is kind of a huge deal.
And they did a few attempts to try to bring it back. There were some video games. There was a comic book, I believe. There were attempts to continue the story and do other things, and it just never stuck. Which kind of is a thing for Tron. They try to bring it back into the public eye, and it just doesn't stick.
It does very well with the geek types. For example, a lot of people played the Flynn Lives game before the movie came out, which was a fantastic array of puzzles, fake websites, text messages. It was really big, and it was sort of this underground conspiracy theory that Kevin Flynn really didn't die, that he was alive inside a computer, and there was these fake websites with puzzles that you'd have to figure out, and lots of people worked on them collaboratively. They sent out things like you had to make yourself a fake NCOM ID badge, which I have at home with level 7 clearance.
Awesome.
And a bunch of enamel pins they sent out. There was one. My favorite part was a massive poster that you had to name all the video game references in that I solved, and then they sent me a huge, like almost one sheet sized copy of the poster. With a limited edition number on it, and I still have that somewhere, although I should probably get it framed and put it up.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I want to see a picture of that.
And they poured a lot of money into this game, and it was just like you didn't have to pay to play. They were just sending this stuff out for free as long as you solved the puzzles.
I love ARGs, and I've never gotten to participate in any of them. Which I always find out about them a little too late, and the puzzles are already kind of solved and moved on. So they finally get their act back together, and they get the two important lead actors. Mm-hmm. But it has been 28 years, and neither of these actors are the same age that they were in the original. So we need some new blood. So let's talk about who we get as the new blood here.
So let's talk about Sam Flynn, Kevin Flynn's son, played by Garrett Hedlund. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Garrett Hedlund, who plays Sam Flynn, the new hero, the new blood, as it were, the 20-year-old son of Kevin Flynn that we see earlier in the movie as a 7-year-old kid. And growing up without a father, I mean, that is the estranged father's dynamic. It's kind of a trope for these sci-fi movies of it's kind of like the Luke Skywalker kind of deal.
Yeah, and continuing a Disney tradition, dead mom trope.
Dead mom, yeah.
Really? Come on.
She doesn't even get a name. She's just the wife.
Kevin Flynn's wife.
Yeah. That sucks.
Also, he's the majority shareholder of a Fortune 500 company, so he's probably not destitute either.
No.
Well, he is able to own that sweet garage with the overlook of the city skyline and stuff, and I'm pretty sure that costs a pretty penny.
Even if it's made out of shipping containers.
Yeah.
And we get Olivia Wilde as Cora. This is really before Olivia Wilde was really a star?
I would not say that, because she was already on House at the time and was quickly becoming the new hotness in Hollywood for a little bit.
Wasn't she on G4 for a while too?
Yes,
that's Olivia Munn.
Oh yes, Olivia Munn. No,
sorry, there's the other dark-haired Olivia.
No, but I had already known her from House, and she was quickly becoming the breakout character on that as one of House's medical students that followed around, and they were quickly at this point starting to give her more and more because people were starting to realize that she's attractive and a good actress, and please give her more stuff. So, but yeah, her landing Tron Legacy was like a massive coup because she had not done anything like that before, as far as I know. She had done some, like, off Broadway, and she had done a couple of, like, very dramas or low-key comedies, rom-com kind of things, but she had never done, like, a big special effects action movie.
Yeah, this is right at the start of where the Marvel superhero buzz was getting in there. So for her to do a sort of a superhero type movie was kind of a big thing.
Yeah, this was absolutely at the beginning of that everybody in Hollywood wants to be in the big sci-fi blockbuster craze.
Yeah.
So she was absolutely the big get. We do have to talk about the one uncredited. Ooh, big choice there going uncredited. But we do have a quick bit from Cillian Murphy.
As Edward Dillinger Jr.
Yeah, who shows up as David Warner's son.
They kind of give him a haircut to make him look like his son. Like if you weren't really paying attention, you can kind of see it.
Yeah, I totally missed that was Cillian Murphy when I saw it in theaters. I did not see it until afterwards trolling IMDb because he's uncredited and they don't really focus on his face that much. He's always kind of seen in a wider shot just at the table.
And they gave him these big glasses to wear.
Yeah, they were trying to hide it, and I'm not really sure why, but I guess that was just his thing.
He does sort of nail the Dillinger sliminess, though.
He does. He's a very good villain. Yeah.
If he had been a villain, I think it would have been more of the same. Oh, it's Dillinger again,
Yeah. But you do kind of get the idea that Alan is like, why are you here? What, your father left in disgrace. Who gave you this job?
Well, they say he's the head programmer, much like Dillinger was. So it's like maybe unlike his father, this one actually has talent.
I'm not willing to visit the sins of the father onto the son or anything, but Alan. Bruce Boxleitner gives him so much side eye during that boardroom scene, and I love it. It's so great. It's just you can feel the hatred.
And I do know that David Warner had expressed interest in returning if they did a Tron 3, so that would have been interesting to see the two of them together.
Yeah, it is. It is sad that will never happen. And bringing in some more new blood, we get Michael Sheen as possibly my favorite character in the movie.
I love him so much.
As Castor/Zeus. Yeah.
I mean, David Bowie in glowing tights.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if this had been made, 10 years before it was, they would have called in Bowie, and I think he would have loved to have played that part.
If this was made in 89 or 90.
No, I think honestly, even if this was made in like 98 or 2000, I think that Bowie would have still been into it. By 2010, he'd already pulled back because of health problems and other stuff, so he wasn't really performing. He wasn't really doing a lot of acting, so it just was the wrong time. But I'm sure that earlier in his career, he would have absolutely loved this part. But Sheen does it so great. He also took a lot from Joel Grey, you can tell from Cabaret, and he describes it in interviews as there being a little bit of Rocky Horror in there too. So it's kind of just a camp rundown, which I love. Oh, I love Michael Sheen so much.
I mean, if it wasn't for the Joel Grey, all the hammy Brits in one.
Yeah. But he, I think, is a standout performance. And then, of course, we get two kind of cool cameos. One very obvious, which is Daft Punk, who just wore their normal clothing. They're the only people in the Tron universe that get to be seen on the grid looking as they do in real life. They did the music, of course, for for this. Adam, you are also a professional musician. You want to say anything about the music, or?
I think it's a travesty they didn't ask Wendy Carlos back.
Yeah, I did like the music.
I love
from
Legacy,
the original.
But from all reports, the composer they hired to work with Daft Punk, because they had never done a film score before. The composer they hired to work with him found them almost impossible to work with, because of their production styles are so completely different from what a film score composer actually has to do. And like I said, I love the Tron Legacy score, but I really would have loved to have seen Wendy Carlos back, and even just some more references to the original score. As it stands, we get one reference, and that's when creepy de-aged Jeff Bridges holds up the little action figure and goes ba 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 ba.
Yeah.
And that's really not to the original score we get.
Let's talk about the de-aging.
Do we want to go there now? One quick last thing is we do get a cameo from Tron's creator, Steven Lisberger, who we talked about in the last episode. He is the bartender at the End of Line Club. You can't really see him terribly well for most of it. He's just kind of there in the background. And it's one of those, if you don't already know what he looks like, you've probably missed him. So that is our kind of final, oh, hey, that guy. Yeah,
because this was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first to use the famous de-aging technology. I would think the first would be X-Men: The Last Stand, with the de-aged Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen.
Honestly, I'd forgotten that movie existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to forget. It comes up sometimes in my nightmares.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think people are forgetting how quickly this de-aging technology became the standard in Hollywood, because 10 years ago this was
kill it with fire,
shocking.
Kill it with fire.
Well, a little bit kill it with fire, but the fact that they were able to do this at all, we look back on it now and we're like, ooh, that's a bit cringy in some spots.
Groundbreaking.
But I mean, they're still using, Marvel built pretty much everything they're using now off of the back of this software and technique. Interestingly, I just watched the latest Terminator movie, Terminator Dark Fate. And they extensively use this de-aging in the first sequence of the movie, where they flash back to a young Sarah Connor, a young Edward Furlong John Connor, and a young Arnold Schwarzenegger. And interestingly, young Sarah Connor, young John Connor look perfect. I was immediately like, is this unused footage from the 80s? Holy crap, this is so good. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger comes on and it's immediately kill it with fire. Who let this pass? Is this really the best you could do? So I don't know what the difference is about Arnold's face, that they couldn't get it as perfect as they got the other ones, but it was very obvious suddenly that you were watching CGI when the old school Terminator comes on the screen. But in this, Jeff Bridges, it does not hold up that well, in my opinion.
No, and to me, it struck me that it was very similar to how the CGI Tarkin looks in Rogue One.
Ooh, yeah.
Which is interesting because that's a complete facial reconstruction over someone else's face, which I think would be a lot more difficult, and this is just de-aging the same actor.
Yeah, because didn't Bridges do some, face work? Didn't they?
Yeah, they did performance capture on his face,
yeah.
and they did basically the same techniques that they do now, just a few generations behind or earlier. Whereas in Rogue One, it's a completely new face on top of someone else's face, and that they achieved that result back then, I think is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is
even
true.
if it does look creepy.
Yeah, it's very much I mean, it's good, and you immediately know it's Jeff Bridges, but it is still in the uncanny valley where you can't ever quite forget that you are watching a CG performance.
It works during parts of the grid parts of the movie because it's supposed to be digital. But that beginning part in Flynn's house, and especially the end where you kind of see the bright light shining on Clue, you can like, ugh.
It looks especially bad when he opens his mouth really wide because his mouth doesn't look like it has any depth.
Yeah.
The one thing I kept getting flashbacks to was the weird mustache removal for Superman. The way his mouth moves, go back and look at it, and then see if you don't see that kind of bizarre Superman CGI from Justice League.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that for sure.
Yeah, there's something about the way the human mouth moves in its subtlety that I think is very difficult for CG artists to kind of get to the point where a human doesn't clock that it's false.
I'm pretty sure it'll get there someday.
Oh, it's already getting there now.
Like I think if they made Rogue One in another 5 years, it'd be almost impossible to tell.
Yeah, and honestly, some of that stuff in Rogue One, even though you know you're watching a CG performance, it's still super impressive.
Yep. Now, one thing I was really impressed with was Jeff Bridges' vocal performance as his younger self, because he definitely is altering the way he sounds to try and imitate his younger self.
And there's got to be some digital help on that one.
A little bit, yes, because your voice naturally deepens as you get older and gets a little raspier when you get up into the age that Jeff Bridges is now. But it's still his vocal performance, I thought, was flawless.
Yeah, I really did love what he did with Clue, and especially since, and let's get into the characterization of Old Flynn, because we kind of talked about it last week. Jeff Bridges was always gonna end up being the dude.
He just is the dude.
He is right now the dude, just in his personal life, it seems. And he brought that to Flynn. And the interesting thing is that we did already see in our rewatch of Tron that was already kind of in Flynn's character.
Well, just look at his sweet bachelor pad above the arcade. I mean, that's very much if the dude owned an arcade, that's where he'd live.
Well, yeah, but
and the
but
robe
as far as
I would say the robes that Flynn wears is very Lebowski-like.
Yeah, and very zen.
Messing with my Zen thing, man.
Yeah, I laughed so hard I had forgotten that line was in there when I did the rewatch. But I like that it's gone further that way, and that the grid has changed him. So much time in the grid has changed him in such a profound way that you could already kind of see bits of his personality trending that way. He was already kind of laid back and already had a bit of a, let's talk it out instead of fighting it and everything in the first movie, but that it's gotten so far advanced by this time because of having spent so long on the grid and having seen a genocide and, his creations running amok. And
if you calculate how long he's been in there, it's been approximately, from his perspective, 1,000 years.
See, that was one of the questions I had on the rewatch, because he talks about a few minutes out there is a few hours in here or something, and I thought, is Flynn now Yoda?
It's very Digimon. I don't know if any of you guys have watched Digimon.
I have not.
It's more or less the same thing. How in the digital world, 1 day in the digital world is 1 hour in the real world, and it's more or less the same thing here.
And it's because computers process things at such much higher speed than the human mind in the outside world does.
Yeah, but when I was rewatching it, I was thinking, he's got to be so much older experientially speaking than he would have been had he stayed in the real world.
Yeah, it's
because
about
of that
1,000 years.
time dilation kind of thing, or time compression, I guess you'd call it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's good to kind of have a number with that. I know that they say something about 1,000 cycles in the movie, but we never quite get what the programs are considering a cycle or how long they consider it to be compared to what we would think of in the real world.
Well, there's one point that I noticed where he says the portal will close in about a millicycle, which is about 8 hours. And I think people extrapolated from that a cycle is approximately a year.
Okay. That's interesting, and that is people who are way better at math than me. So we've got our kind of duded out Flynn now.
Mhm.
And now let's talk about the characterization of Alan a little bit, because he's our other returning character. We don't get as much with him.
From what little we learn in the catch up, the news report in the movie, Alan has always been loyal to Flynn and always believed that he was still alive and tried to run the company as Flynn would have run the company before he was kind of ousted as chairman.
Yeah,
he's
it
still
looks
on
like
the board. He's still on the board, but he's no longer chairman.
it looks like what's his name, who's doing the product release from their conference room in the middle of the night for some reason, is the chairman, and it was probably a majority vote by the board to get him out, because that's how business works.
Well, they explained that they want to launch their new system right when the Tokyo stock market is opening, so which is why they're doing it late at night.
Yes, but I don't know why they're doing it from their conference room on the 5th floor of the building.
Yeah. Here's the weird thing about that. The entire beginning of the movie is predicated on the fact that Encom is finally going to start trading on the Nikkei, the Tokyo stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. Encom's two primary bread and butter things are video games and computer operating software. You cannot tell me that in 28 years they have not already been added to the Nikkei. That is the least believable thing in this entire film to me.
That is
It's
less
just
believable
like,
in the company relocating from what looked like Los Angeles to what looked like the Bay Area.
yeah, it is. It everything about that, I went, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense.
And
There's no way that Japan would have not jumped on this by like 1990. Come on.
Apparently their OS is the most popular in the world.
Yeah.
They're Microsoft. Encom is Microsoft. Or Apple, if you want to go that way.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that I read in my research that for the reboot, they were wanting to combine Flynn in the real world up until his disappearance as what if Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were the same guy? You know, that you had the kind of market saturation, business savvy of Bill Gates, but the kind of philosophy and aesthetic of Steve Jobs.
And you kind of see that in the sequence about his disappearance. There's some sort of huge press conference or release event or something where he's speaking at a podium where he goes, "In there is our destiny."
Yeah,
that's a very
sequence,
Jobsian thing.
Yeah, that sequence of him talking about the new digital revolution is so much a Steve Jobs press conference that you kind of just want them to have CGI'd a little black turtleneck on him or something for that scene. I was like, wow, they pulled this completely from an old Steve Jobs press conference. So I did like that.
And it is a wonderful bit of foreshadowing for later in the movie too.
Yeah, I really do. I really did like that. The The interesting thing to me, though, going back to Alan, is that Alan has basically been not only Flynn's public defender in that way of like trying to keep the company going in the way that he wanted and such, but that he really did, as far as we can tell, become a father to Sam.
Yeah.
That he really did step in when Flynn disappeared, because you can tell in the few scenes that they have together that Alan really has started thinking of Flynn as his son.
Yeah.
Well, I think Sam really cares for Alan too,
Yeah.
even if he's acting standoffish and too cool for him. I could tell there's genuine affection there.
I really liked the way both actors played that, of like, I can see from Sam's perspective that kind of admitting Alan is his father would in a way be admitting his father is never coming back. And replacing his father in some way. And I think at the end of the film, you kind of see that he has made peace with that. You know, my father is not coming back. I now have to carry on, and I'm going to do that by being a little closer to this man who has, in actuality, been my father for 20 years.
Well, at the same time, he's carrying his father around in an SD card around his neck.
Possibly, yeah. We don't know how fully that memory of Flynn was purged from the system before the backup is made. So at best, it might be like a post-mortem snapshot. I don't know. It's like Victorian funeral photography in the digital age.
I think they were that the SD card there is a pretty clear sequel hook, I think.
Yeah, which I wish they would do.
And it seems like they could restore the grid from that backup, because they were definitely hinting that Tron would come back reformed as well.
Yeah, we never do kind of get closure on Tron as a character.
And they never really make you. They kind of erase the mystery of who Rinzer is with the big T on his chest.
Yeah, I do love that Clue was like, I'm going to reprogram you, but I'm going to give you a tattoo. So you never forget where you came from.
Well, that was his. He just changed the color of his lights, because going back to the original Tron, that's how programs were. Flynn disguised himself by changing his lights orange, so he looked like one of Sark's guards, and it's the same kind of thing with Rinsler, I think.
Yeah. So we've got Sam's kind of messing. I love the introduction to Sam's character, that we get the young Sam before his father disappears.
Also, I love the relationship of Flynn and little kid Sam.
Oh, it was so good. Like, that's everything you want a father-son relationship in a movie to be. It seems so effortless and so loving and kind of jokey, back and forth with them. I love that he's made little action figures for all the people he met in the grid.
And
or those could have been commercially available.
Those were commercially available. I had that light cycle.
Well, I mean, I think he was meaning within the universe of the film, and I think we're supposed to think they were, because Tron was such a blockbuster video game when Flynn came back.
Apparently, the Tron movie exists in the Tron world because there's the movie poster.
Well, they could have made like an animated series or something based on the video game, because I think the video game had the same poster.
I think that was meant to be the video game poster, because they changed the text at the bottom. It still had the visual. That is the same as the Tron movie poster in our world, but the text at the bottom did not have the typical credit block you would see for a film or a TV series. It looked instead like the stuff at the bottom was more what you would think of for a video game release, like, now available at your latest arcade and on Atari or whatever.
And the video game Tron, as released in the real world, basically sort of tells the story of the movie in a very ham-handed, general sort of way. Where there's a disc battle, there's a light cycle race, and then you have to take out the MCP.
Yeah, and I think we're supposed to figure that Flynn basically did the same thing in his world. Because the only difference between this is that Sam believes it's real. Sam believes it's real, Alan believes it's real, and I think everybody else thinks it was a really cool video game idea that Kevin Flynn had.
And
That must have been a really weird conversation between Flynn and Alan and Laura.
Yeah, I met you guys, and you're also a couple in the computer world.
have you been smoking too much, Kevin? It was the 80s, so cocaine was a thing.
Oh, and I'm sure Flynn's arcade was full of it.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing, though, is that coming back and looking at Alan and going like, Alan, do you realize you're a superhero? Like, you are really badass. And just like the nerdy Alan, who is not shown to be any kind of courageous guy.
Alan,
In
the
the
giant
original.
glasses and the shoulder pads.
Yeah, I mean, they go out of their way to make him look so nerdy and unassuming at the beginning of the movie, and then he looks so kind of awesome as Tron. Is that like, no, really, I saw you murder like 7 dudes without breaking a sweat. It was awesome.
He's also the one who keeps a popcorn maker in his cubicle.
Yes! That is true. That is true. I love everything about Alan's character. It's just so great. They do suggest in the movie, I think, that he is married to Laura.
Yes.
Yes, and that is the
That
case in the ARG material and that press conference, etc.
Awesome. So we get the plot hook of the page that sends Sam to Flynn's arcade.
Did you catch the inside reference on his apartment, by the way?
Sam's apart. Maybe not.
The container across the top of it says Dumont on it.
Oh, okay.
Which
Nice.
is the program that the founder of Encom wrote.
Yeah. That is cool. I did not see that at all.
I saw it and I gasped in the theater, and it made me very happy.
I am shocked that Flynn's arcade has been allowed to
Continue to exist there.
No, that it has been allowed to just sit there. Can you imagine the amount in that world of like, come to Flynn's arcade, maybe Flynn will come back and appear, like, there's a great, that there have to be like conspiracy theorists and
There's
all
probably,
kinds of stuff in this world.
Well, even by 2010, there were still those YouTubers that would go to abandoned places. I guarantee there's at least in that universe some sort of YouTuber that went into Flynn's arcade, the abandoned arcade of, let's see if he's still here or something.
That building itself is
That's in prime real estate.
It's prime real estate. In the real world, it's a building in Culver City, which is near some of the major studios in LA, and it's not cheap real estate. So if that were real, it probably would not have stayed that empty unless Flynn paid the lease for the next 100 years or something like that.
Yeah, he was CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He could have.
Yeah.
And Flynn does seem like the type of guy, especially if he was going to be using it as his secret laboratory, he does seem like the type of guy that would have just bought it for like the next 1,000 years or something, and kept it under the company or whatever. But the interesting thing is that why we get the idea that Sam is not interested in the money so much.
No,
He
because he's
doesn't.
comfortable.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is, of course, the rich boy coming out in him. Is like, I don't
He
care about money. I have enough.
he drives a Ducati. He's got a house on the river. He's fine.
Well, that Ducati, of course, was his father's.
No, I think that was a
Wasn't it?
second. I think that was a second.
Was that a second? Because he mentions
Fixing up the
rebuilding, fixing up the Ducati, but yeah. So, but he's not interested in like getting more necessarily. He doesn't seem super interested in that the company make more profit or that he guides it in any way. He seems to just accept that this is what I have and I'm holding on to the rest because that's what my father would do. I think that changes by the end of the movie, that he's like, okay, we're going to build something out of this framework that we already have. We're going to go change the world in some way using the resources I have.
And I'm sure he doesn't like the way the company is being run, but he doesn't know how to. At the beginning, he doesn't seem like he knows how to effectively manage it, other than trolling them by releasing the operating system for free.
Yeah, the annual troll, he calls it. The annual prank on the company that he majorly owns, and he even says was at least Flynn designed the OS to be free, and now the company's charging for it, and he just say it was supposed to be free, so I'm releasing it to be free.
So does that mean there's been 20 years of free OS?
Possibly.
Free OS until Flynn disappeared, and then when Alan was ousted as CEO, I'm sure they changed that model pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, perhaps. I could definitely see that happening, but the movie kind of makes it feel like this is when it's changing, even though it also says this is like the biggest seller and stuff, so maybe it didn't. I don't know.
I feel like that's a
weird.
conversation. I feel like that's a conversation that Alan and the current chairman have every time they release a new version.
Oh, yeah. It does seem like they're kind of into that, yeah. But we get this idea of him trolling the company. I love the opening of "That's a Big Door." I love that callback.
Which is funny because they had to build that big door somewhere else, because that is actually a door at the Livermore lab in where they have the laser bay in the first Tron.
Yeah. I love the hacking system has upgraded, but the door is still still the door.
Now he's hacking with a cell phone.
Yeah. I do like that he does this prank, although you want to talk about white male privilege. Like, yeah, I'll just do some corporate espionage, jump off a building with a parachute, lead the cops on a merry chase, and I'll be out of jail in 20 minutes, having paid bail with my enormous millions of dollars.
Well, it's implied that Alan paid his bail.
Well, yeah, but still,
If he was not a
knowing Daddy will pay your bail is still pretty privileged.
And given that he's the majority shareholder, the only illegal thing he might have done in that is the base jumping off the top of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that would have been more like a statute rather than stealing from his own company.
Mm-hmm. He technically wasn't breaking in because he could just walk in if he wanted to.
Yeah. I like the fact that, and it's kind of easily missable, but when he goes to get his bike out of impound, you can kind of hear him be like, hey, what's up, Bobby, or whatever, which suggests that he has done this so many times that he just knows the dude in impound by name. Like, hey, what's up, Sam? Hey, what's up, Bobby?
He can pay the impound fee, no problem. Whereas I had to get my car out of impound once, and it crippled me for months.
Yep. Rich people privilege. Huzzah.
Yep.
But anyway, this we got to get Sam on the grid somehow. We do that through Alan getting a mysterious page. I don't know why Alan doesn't go to Flynn's. I'm not sure do we know the exact page that is sent? I don't think they ever reveal it. He just says, I got a page from that number.
Yeah, and I don't know that they reveal it in any of the extended material, but it looks like it's just numbers, so it could have just been like a 911 or something like that.
Yeah. Old pager codes. And I love the idea that Alan has been sleeping with this pager for 20 years because...
Yep.
And that he replaces the batteries in it.
Yeah. The fact that thing still works is impressive. But we get Sam there. He goofs around, finds the hidden door behind the Tron game, ends up finding the secret lab.
Because, of course, the hidden door will be behind the Tron game.
Yeah, where else would you put that?
As Journey blasts from the jukebox.
Yeah, and
yeah,
then,
Journey.
Let me tell you, I love that song because of this movie, and hearing it time and again when we went to the actual real-life Flynn's Arcade at Disney's California Adventure for their Electronica event, which ran a lot longer than this movie was popular.
The other one they use is Sweet Dreams.
Yes.
Which I think is kind of awesome because that is the first thing that Flynn says when he ends up on the grid in the original movie, is that it's a dream that thinks it's not. And I don't know if that's what they were thinking in the playing of that, but that's what it always makes me think of. So I love the music choices on the jukebox in Flynn's Arcade.
And those are the only two, in the credits, those are the only two licensed pieces of music in the whole thing.
Yeah. But, the laser has been moved to Flynn's, of course, because I guess he decided that revolutionizing all of humanity by giving them a teleport system wasn't important, Flynn. And instead has secreted it away in his basement for himself to use to get to and from the grid.
I wonder if Alan ever thinks about that, because he in Tron, when they demonstrated in front of him, he says, "Well, can you send me to Hawaii?"
Yeah, I mean, Alan already knows that this is gonna revolutionize the world if they can get it to work, and I'm sure. What happened to Laura's project?
Well, she's the one that programmed the interface for the laser.
She's the one that was giving her entire career to this laser, and then I'm sure that Alan having lots of money for being on the board is great, but presumably this woman had her
life's work
some sort of had her life's work just hidden in a basement now because Kevin wants to take a holiday on the grid. Yeah. So I feel bad for Laura is what I'm saying. Justice for Laura. So we get Sam on the grid. He is immediately picked up by the fascist patrol of Clue and dumped into the game grid, which Clue is running again. This still brings up a lot of points of every time we play video games, are we murdering sentient beings?
Yeah.
And one of the characters does not want to be in the games at all. He's freaking out, and he commits suicide. Erase me!
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the de-resing effects in this movie are so much fun.
I actually I kind of skipped over this, but I love the laser digitizing effect that they do for this as opposed to the first movie. I like that they kind of upgraded it.
Yeah.
That we see it more from the laser's point of view.
Yep.
Yeah.
That everything digitizes around him rather than just him disappearing
in a series of boxes.
Yeah. Groundbreaking for 1982, but I like that they didn't just do that same thing but a little bit cleaner, But I still think this is a really philosophically weird idea.
Yeah,
Are
I
these
think that's
programs
intentional.
sentient, or is a human controlling them? Seriously, it was a question from the first movie that I don't think we ever got asked.
No, that's never been answered. It's just,
The way I interpret it is, if it's something like an arcade cabinet or something, and I maintain that the first Tron would make a lot more sense if that cold open didn't have the arcade part of it, because arcade machines at that time were not connected to any sort of network. So I think if it's inside an arcade cabinet, it's probably not the same thing, but because of the vast computing power they had on the NCOM mainframe, that allowed the programs to attain some sort of sentience.
But in the world of the internet, by 2010, when we're all playing video games on our phone, connected to the internet all the time, is this now like a horrible philosophical thing for mankind?
Yeah.
You're murdering sentient beings every time you go in to play
World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
I mean,
nobody seems to be too concerned if it's a program getting murdered, though.
We kind of talked about this a bit. It's in a way with Wreck-It Ralph. These characters are sentient beings, even though they're in a video game. Only in the Tron world, there's no second life. It's permadeath.
Yeah. And Wreck-It Ralph gets around that by, it's like, oops, I died. Hold on a second. Okay, now I'm back.
Respawn.
And they've respawned and it's fine. But in this one, it is very grim. Programs are terrified of death. There's
that one guy with half a face in the in the recognizer there when Sam gets picked up. That guy, that's creepy as hell.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. We've got programs losing limbs, and we've got all kinds of other things. It's a grim and gruesome kind of world, and I'm not sure that any of the creators ever really thought this through to its logical conclusion there of, if these are sentient programs, how much control do the users have, and are we just capricious douchebag gods to them?
So if Alan sent a command to Tron and Tron didn't feel like doing it, what happens with Alan when it doesn't do what he wants?
Yeah. Does he delete Tron? Does he reprogram him? How much free will does Tron actually have? Did Tron really want to fight for the users, or is he a slave? Which I'm not sure are questions they wanted asked, especially not in 1982, but I think even in 2010, I'm still not sure they were willing to think that far into it. But they also want to go into the deep religious idea.
Yeah, they go with Flynn being the creator, and there's the part later in the movie where Flynn shows up at the end of line, and people are going on their knees, kind of praying to him.
Yeah, I mean that is, in the first movie, a lot of them don't believe the users actually exist. In this movie, they all believe the users exist. They've just taken a more, dare I call it, a maltheist kind of thing. Like, God exists, but he's evil, and we shouldn't worship him. It's a very Klingon idea, is what it is.
That's also Clue's philosophy. Clue putting that idea of, Kevin Flynn is the false prophet and all that.
Yes, but the thing is that they believe users are real at this point. There is no, agnostic program anymore. They all accept that users are real.
In Clue's big Mecha Hitler speech at the end, he says, something about the tyranny of the users and all that kind of.
Yeah, and none of the programs are like, wait, you're a user? Those don't, you mean users are real? Which they kind of did a little bit in the first movie. And in this movie, everybody's just like, nope, Kevin Flynn is God, the users are real, there is a world beyond this one. We may never get to see it, but it's there.
And Clue's lieutenant even goes, we have ourselves a user.
Yeah.
By the way, I love Jarvis a whole bunch.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Jarvis, but he is a great character, and I love that he's that kind of slime that has no real side. He has no ideology. Because when Sam shows up at the end, he's like, "Oh, glory to the users! Long live the users!" And then Clue walks in and he's like, "Death to the users!" Like, it's just, he's completely amoral, completely just whoever the boss is in the room at the time.
He is out for number one.
Yeah. And look where that got him. Let that be a lesson to you, kids.
Sucking up can only take you so far.
Yeah.
So I will admit, back to in 2010, to being extremely fascinated by the sirens.
Yeah, yes.
I think anybody that's attracted to women got fascinated by the sirens in 2010.
I don't know why Clue just has designated these incredibly shapely women in high heels to be the ones undressing programs and redressing them, but I'm really okay with it.
I think that's a Kevin Flynn influence.
That does kind of seem like a thing that young Flynn would have done.
Oh man, make the boobs bigger.
I don't care if it doesn't make any sense that they got high heels, man. It makes the booty look good. But I do kind of wonder if they had the thought of, the games are the modern gladiatorial arena, they are taking quite a bit from old Bloodsport in this. And there are some suggestions that gladiators had, women there to give them a little final bit of happy before they went to their death, And I do kind of wonder if that isn't part of it.
Did Flynn make programs to have sex?
This is a Disney movie.
That's just weird.
Well, I mean, there is some sort of romantic relationship in the first movie, and Yori seems to understand what kissing is, even though it kind of seems like she hasn't done it. Because when Flynn kisses her, she's kind of like, "Huh, that's neat," I can't imagine that Kevin Flynn is the type of guy that would go make a perfect world and imagine that world to be sexless.
That is true. Especially given his sort of Zen philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably programmed for, tantric sex at this point. But
he consulted with Sting for that part of the program.
Yeah. I got Sting on speed dial, man. Let me call him. I think that was probably the idea of the sirens, but that the sirens are also very problematic for most of the movie, because you see them at the beginning of the movie and they are very much like, "Hello, I am here. I will very succinctly do my job and then return to my weird little tomb thing." But then you see later that the sirens go out and have a drink at the bar.
So is sirening just a regular 9 to 5?
Yeah, it's their day job, just to undress programs and redress them, and at the end of the day, they go get a drink.
It does seem at the beginning of the movie like, this is my function and I do not have a brain beyond it. And then you see her later and you're like, oh, okay.
So you do have the one that looks to the side and says, "This one is different."
Yeah, that is kind of the one time they show independent thought. That and Jim not returning with the other three at the same time and staying to give Sam one last bit of advice are kind of the two moments that you're like, oh, they may actually be fully sentient programs. And then we get her later in what I kind of call the Blade Runner scene. Because
she's holding an umbrella?
She's got the light up umbrella. They're in the middle of the weird techno city.
It seems she works for Zeus, and I'm sure she was thinking about that when she first saw Sam.
Yeah. She definitely is in with Zeus. She seems to be a program that will funnel information and perhaps other programs for the. Do we call it the Resistance? I'm not really.
There seems to be some sort of resistance, but it seems to be very ineffectual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, knowing what we know later about Zeus selling out Sam, I do think that is, I don't know. I think it's maybe Zeus has been in the pocket of Clue for much longer than anybody realizes.
Well, it's implied that he trusted users in the past. I assume that he was hurt by Flynn leaving and then decided to change sides.
Yeah, there's something that happened to him in his past that he has lost faith in the users.
He helped Cora escape the grid to save her life, and then something happened, and now he's, I guess you can call him a double agent in a way, because he works for Clue, but also having the facade of going against him.
Yeah, and I do kind of wonder if this is not a, spoiler alert for this movie, but kind of a Snowpiercer situation where that the Resistance isn't really the Resistance, it's just another arm of the oppressive system that's there to kind of, keep people in line.
It feels like, because when you first see Castor, Zeus, when he's still masquerading as Castor, there's the one guy who said he needs an audience for Zeus for the Resistance, and Castor says, well, Zeus is very busy.
Yeah, it does seem like he's trying to kneecap any real Resistance, and keeping an eye on it. So I would definitely say that my assumption is that he's been an arm of Clue's government for a while, in secret. Once again, look at where that gets him.
Yep.
I mean, once again, he does all the right things and sells out everybody and does exactly what Clue wants him to do. And how does Clue repay him? Yeah.
And it was even said, hey, you promised me control of the city. Well, here's a drink, and now you're dead.
Yeah. Clue didn't even need to do that, because Clue was already in his end game at that point.
Yeah, Clue had everything he needed. There's nothing that Castor wants from him anymore other than to just keep living his life and have a bit of power.
Also, some great acting by Mecha Jeff Bridges in that scene, too.
Yeah, really, really good stuff there. I do like that other people still believe in the Resistance. We've got the one guy with the half a face or whatever, or the scars, that wants to talk to Zeus, and then when the security programs show up, he's immediately like, fight back, resist.
Resist!
Yeah. And then immediately
that whole scene
gets
is
derezzed.
Bonkers.
Yeah.
Because Daft Punk intentionally changes the music when the fights start.
Yeah, I love how Daft Punk just kind of looks at each other like, sweet, we got fight music now.
You have to learn to play this fight music mix for decacycles, man.
Yeah. And then there's that program that's like clutching the shards of her derezzed friend, and it's a weird scene.
Yeah, but it is one of the better fight scenes, in my opinion. There's some amazing fight choreography.
There's great choreography, and then there's Michael Sheen up there with his cane, like shooting lasers out of his cane and kick dancing and stuff.
And yeah, like thrusting with his cane on a balcony.
That's definitely 80s Pennywise right there.
Yes.
Yeah. There's definitely some
Tim Curry.
Some Tim Curry in there, but I love everything about that, and let's just for a second absolutely praise the crap out of this stunt team.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Everything in this movie, in the way it is set up for the action sequences, is so amazing. And props to Garrett Hedlund because he actually did a lot of his own wire work for this. He trained very, very hard in order to be able to do as many of Sam's stunts as they would let him get away with.
I actually really like Garrett Hedlund in this movie. I think he does a really good job, and there's a couple times when he sort of channels that Jeff Bridges energy and makes it really evident that he's Flynn's son.
Yeah, you can definitely buy it.
I am very sad that he has not had a better career since then.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else I've seen him in really since then.
He's kind of, done. He was supposed to be in Hunger Games. They had offered him the role of Finnick, I read. He was also up for the role of Christian Grey in 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, probably better he didn't do that.
I am very glad he didn't do that. Bravo to you. But supposedly they said in 2012 that they were going to do a sequel and that he was signed on, but that has never come to fruition. I would love to see that.
There have been abortive plans for a sequel, but I think the big recession put the final nail in that coffin.
And a news story actually broke up today as we were recording this, that Disney Plus actually had plans for a Tron series and they canceled it.
Oh.
Yeah, that one hits really, really deep.
Oh, that makes me so sad because I love everything about this world.
Would you have done a live action Tron series or would you have done animated?
Well, there's an animated series, Tron Uprising, and it's
yes, we did do that.
Really good.
Too bad it only lasted one season.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the bridge between the two Tron movies, and we never really got there.
Nope. But I'm still in the bag for live action Tron. I love the combination of live action actors with the digital effects, the light pipes on the clothes and stuff, and it's a different process to do it now than they did it back in the first Tron, but it's still a really effective aesthetic.
Well, looking back, what they did with what Disney did with the Mandalorian and putting that in the Tron world.
Oh yeah, we do have that new process now where they can film people on back projection screens.
Yeah, and that is insane technology. It's so cool.
It's the closest we've ever gotten to a freaking holodeck. If you have not looked into how they did The Mandalorian, drop everything and go look at how they filmed The Mandalorian, because almost every bit of that was filmed inside a studio with a backing screen.
Yep, there's a few exteriors with like I think Tatooine was an exterior and a few others, but yeah, everything else is on a set with real props and real sets, but with ultra high resolution LCD screens behind with projected and rendered backgrounds that look flawless.
And can move in real time with the actors.
Yeah, they're rendered in real time.
Just watching that in action is probably, the coolest thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
And now imagine what they could have done with Tron with that technology.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they will still. Maybe the there will be enough of an uproar of like, well, why did you cancel this show, that they might revisit it in a year or two, and all as that technology gets cheaper and also better known, there are more people that can work on that technology.
We'll see
there are rumors of a new Tron movie coming, not a sequel, but a reboot.
We'll see how popular that Tron coaster is at Disney World.
Yeah, it's extremely popular in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm. Which is why they're bringing it to the States.
Yeah, I will be interested to see how that plays out. So let's talk about the big kind of new plot thing in this one, which is the idea of the ISOs, the isomorphic algorithms.
I love the ISOs.
They get hinted early on in the movie as the miracle. And programs that were not created by a user. Programs that just showed up. Almost created by the grid itself. Evolution, if you want to call it that.
Biodigital jazz, man.
Biodigital jazz. That is definitely Lebowski right there.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is the most Jeff Bridges line in the entire movie.
How much of Jeff Bridges' line were straight up ad-lib?
I don't know, but in my research, it does seem that Jeff Bridges brought the idea of what Flynn would be like to the writers as opposed to the other way around.
And I think they nailed it. It's a logical extension of the Flynn you see in Tron, and I think the ISOs manifest that as well, because he says when he's when Cora gets injured, he's looking at her code and he's like, it's bits of my code, but I didn't write this part. It's I love the explanation with that. It's just the conditions were right and they came to be, which is kind of how life evolved in our world too.
But I think that this is also the natural extension of what we saw with the Master Control, because the Master Control was a chess program that got tweaked a little bit and then was allowed to run free and evolve on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not that far a stretch from what we have established in the original film, which is that these programs that were never meant to have sentience have gained sentience in spite of the users, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's something specific to the NCOM system that allows them to do that.
Yeah, perhaps. But also now the ISOs are almost spontaneously generated from previous bits of code. Like leftover code, maybe? Or building block code that made up the rest of the grid that just kind of seems to have spontaneously gained sentience itself.
So maybe assets that Flynn wrote for other purposes that organically combined themselves.
But I think the most interesting thing about the ISOs is that they have no function. All other programs we see have had some sort of function. And in fact, in the fascist world that Clue has built, and I am not using that term flippantly, go look it up. This really is based on a fascist ideology.
Oh no, it is very fascist. And there's an announcement at one point that says, if you're outside your normal function, you're subject to termination.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going. In this fascist world, everybody is put down to function. And honestly, in the real world, that is a very fascist sentiment of you have to have a function to the state or you are completely useless. It is interesting to see that done via computer program, which we do think of as having a function. Mm-hmm. Every program humans have ever written has some sort of specific function. But the ISOs are functionless, which I think is why Clue sees them as such a horrible incursion into his perfect world. He doesn't know how to categorize them, Are you an accounting program? Are you built for the games? Are you... Well, they can theoretically be anything.
Yeah, don't understand it? Better genocide them.
Yep.
Which is honestly what the Master Control was doing in the first movie. I don't like your religion, so I'm going to genocide it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these movies are really big on the genocide. It's very disturbing. But we see with Cora, she's just become a sponge for knowledge. She loves literature and philosophy and board games.
Olivia Wilde plays her so cutely. I love Jules Verne. Do you know him? It's oh, you innocent child.
Cora is my waifu, and I love her.
But I also love what they did with Cora, that she is sexy, but that's not the point of her character.
No, it is not.
Badass.
Yeah, and I think you could argue that the point of the sirens were sexy.
Yeah.
But with Cora, you would expect her to be like, let's just linger on your body parts and stuff. And they don't really. They film her in a very similar way to the way they filmed Sam.
Although there's that one shot of her reclining on the couch, which is just...
And the movie poster with the booty
Well, there is that of her hugging him, but here's the interesting thing is that is very much a takeoff of the old Star Wars poster.
Yes.
With Luke and Leia. It's meant to evoke the same idea. I'm almost entirely certain that was where they drew inspiration for that poster.
It's also similar to the original Tron poster.
Well, yeah, his pose is very similar to the original Tron poster, but her addition to it, with her hugging him and kind of looking back, is very much that drawing of Leia clinging on to Luke in the old Star Wars posters.
Yes.
But, it's very interesting that we can specifically name the exact shots when she's sexualized, and there's only, like, a couple of them. And honestly, that reclining on the couch is sexy, but I'm not sure it's meant to evoke, like, come hither moment.
No, it's just her sitting listening to a story.
Yeah, and the fact that she's a very attractive woman in a skin-tight suit, I think, is what gives it the sex appeal. But I don't think it was framed intentionally to be like, and this is going to be the sexy shot of the film. I love that there is no romance between Sam and Cora.
Yeah, you could. I mean, it couldn't be implied, but it's like Cora doesn't really see Sam as a romantic interest. It's like, this is my boss's son. I have to get him to my boss.
But also, Sam does not take advantage. This could have very easily been a trope they call Born Sexy Yesterday.
Yes.
Which is a trope I hate. That, like, oh, she was just created, but she's in the body of a 20-something sexy woman, and she doesn't know anything about the world and needs me to teach her all about what is kiss. It's like, I hate that, and I'm so glad that she's naive in some ways, she's learning, but she's not taken advantage of by the main character.
That's a kudos to the character of Sam. He's not going to take advantage of this presumably innocent girl to do whatever he wants with her.
Yeah, even at the end when she's like clinging to him on the motorcycle, that is like an entirely sexless moment.
There's a little hint of it in the way she like leans into his shoulder, but it's the barest hint of it.
Yeah, I mean, you really kind of have to reach for that. And it's a very heteronormative, she's sort of female looking, he's male, obviously they must be a couple.
It's more of a, hey, I promised you a sunrise, here's a sunrise.
Yeah, which I love that's what it ends on. Here's a new world for you to discover, not you're my girlfriend now. I brought you into the real world, you owe me.
Yeah.
Which it could have, I think, in less aware hands, it probably would have trended that way.
So let's get to the big, the fight here, or where Clue kind of goes against Flynn, goes against Tron, and a little bit of a de-aging on Bruce Boxleitner here. To look at.
No, in the flashback, yeah.
Yeah. Same process.
Looks better though.
Yeah, it does.
Because I'm guessing that Jeff Bridges didn't want to shave his beard for the process, so they probably had to remove his beard in addition to the de-aging, whereas Bruce was already clean shaven.
And also, I'm gonna say it, and this might just be me, but Bruce Boxleitner has aged so much better than Jeff Bridges in some ways.
He is a silver fox.
he is. I mean, he's still got that smooth skin and that, I mean, they were probably working with a slightly easier palette. Jeff Bridges, I love him, but he does look like he's had a life.
It's sort of like in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the de-aging on Michelle Pfeiffer was a lot easier.
Yeah, because Michelle F. Pfeiffer aged like the finest of wine. But yeah, I find it interesting that Tron and Clue were supposed to be kind of equal-ish partners.
Yeah. Hey,
I
I was able to borrow or whatever, take Tron, and I recreated a new Clue, and these are my generals to create this perfect system. And they both took the same ideology that Flynn had and kind of went in two completely different directions with it.
I think that this is a very good film about how the quest for perfection can go in two different ways. Because Tron was always fighting, yes, I fight for the users, but the idea was that he was a very empathetic character, much like Alan himself.
Well, he's a security program, so I assume for him perfection means peaceful and safe.
But there is the kind of that fascist ideology of peaceful and safe.
Well, yes.
Where it's nobody has the freedom to choose any differently.
Which is probably why Clue was so easily able to reprogram him that way.
Yeah, but I always felt the idea that Tron was doing it out of some version of empathy. He wants the system to be perfect for the people in the system. I think that where Clue gets his idea, and I'm not sure if it was, a fault in Flynn's programming or what, is that he wants the system to be perfect and damn all else. I will have perfection. I don't care how you feel about it. If you don't like that perfection, I will just get rid of you. You will not be part of my system anymore.
Perfect for others versus perfect for the oneself.
Yeah. And that's what makes his ultimate goal of we will go out and perfect the world beyond absolutely terrifying. Even more so, I think, than what we got with the Master Control, because you never quite knew what the Master Control's exact end game was. You knew he had started hacking governments, you knew he wanted to control stuff, but you never quite knew his end game. You just knew it was bad. But Clue's end game, I think we've seen. Everything must have a function, everything must have a place, everything must be in service to the system. And when you're dealing with actual human beings, which I think is what the ISOs represent, creatures that do not necessarily have a function and create their own function, they will not fit into that kind of system.
Yeah. Well,
you can put the analogies of any fascist regime there. You can put the ISOs as being, the Jews in the Holocaust or something like that.
Or Roma or any other sort of oppressed.
Exactly. I mean, I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah. Well, and you hit up on the fact that the idea of that they don't have a function, but they can choose a function, because Cora clearly has a function, and that's as Flynn's lieutenant and apprentice, but that's something she chose.
Yeah, and she's a great warrior program. She'd make an excellent security program, but that's not necessarily her assigned function. It's something she chose to learn and to give to very specific people.
But again, like you said, that's a thing that Clue cannot understand.
Yeah, and in a way, you almost feel sorry for Clue, because you see the moment of Clue's creation.
Yeah.
And immediately he's like, your name is Clue, you are going to create a perfect system. And
I
Clue
love that
can
sequence.
only respond. I am Clue, I will create a perfect system. Whereas it does seem like Tron was always given kind of, you fight for the users, you take down the MCP. How you do that is kind of up to you.
I have this idea of what could work. don't know if will do it your way, dude.
Yeah, and I do kind of wonder if Clue's given function didn't almost immediately drive him insane.
Because of perfection.
Yeah, I mean, who did Flynn give him the idea of perfection, or did he just go, "You figure it out," and walk away?
Knowing Flynn, he probably let Clue figure it out.
And I think that's kind of where he went wrong, is that he gave no direction other than what is probably an impossible task.
And Clue, I get the idea of, especially in the scene where Clue betrays Flynn, that Clue really idolized Flynn and looked up to him. The way he says, am I still to create the perfect system? He felt the reading on that line is very betrayed.
And I do wonder if he saw the ISOs as like Dad's new toy, or they're the new baby.
Because there's definitely a father-son metaphor with Flynn and Clue.
So, yeah, it does seem like the betrayal was kind of always inevitable. The thing that we're not... I love the idea that Tron, just like Alan, fights for Flynn until he can't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Until that is taken away from him by someone else. And I do like that Tron reasserts his original programming. And you can tell I love the reading on that as well, because Boxleitner gives that just the ultimate pain and push through, and you can tell the fight inside of Tron at that point. I don't care all this overlaid program that has made me Rinsler. I am Tron and I fight for the users.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is just perfect. It was such a well done moment in the film. Little thing, I love the light jets. I love the idea that we have light cycles, but in the sky.
Yep.
And I love the light runner too.
Yeah,
the light runner.
The new light runner. I love the idea that to talk about how computer games have upgraded in technology. The light cycle battle now has levels that you can use more of a 3D space, as 3D rendering in video game systems would become more of a thing.
The light cycle battle is one of my favorite parts of this movie.
Yeah, let's just talk for a second about just the visual effects and stuff in this, because this movie is freaking beautiful.
And it still looks good 10 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, weird Jeff Bridges face aside, but everything else looks absolutely flawless.
And I love the way the light cycles are make their appearance from the little baton that you hold that splits into the handlebars.
That is also one of my favorite lines. What am I supposed to do with this? Not that.
The way he's so sad, it's like, not that.
Yeah.
Get your hints. Not that.
I absolutely love that idea.
And the light cycles, they can now jump over, and the beam behind him is now a little bit more liquid. It even becomes liquid when it's smashed.
Yeah.
As opposed to smashing like glass in the original film.
Once again, I think to mimic the idea that video game technology has taken such a leap in the real world.
Yes.
Yeah.
You had to do those kind of polygon figures and stuff in the old arcade games, so it had to look sort of like shattered glass. But now you can render more fluid, curves and stuff a little bit more effectively, which I love.
And if you pay attention during it, there's still some classic video game sound design throughout that whole thing. Like when they switch levels, there's like a little very Mario sounding sort of pling and stuff. And it's
no Pac-Man sound effect in this.
No one. Pac-Man sound, no. But there's some great sound effects that are at the same time like modern and also classic. One of my favorite visuals is when Clue and his cronies join the light cycle battle, and he's driving on the underside of the surface, and then it just flips onto the top surface.
Yeah, I love the kind of see-through way that they've built the thing, so it kind of looks like they're driving on glass, which had to be just a nightmare to design and render. So props to, all the CGI artists that worked on this, because that is some incredible work. But I love I love the kind of updated idea of some of the things, the reclamation vehicles, and you can see the tanks patrolling the streets even though you never get a close-up of them.
Yeah.
When Sam first gets onto the grid and he looks down through the vehicle as it's flying over, you can see a tank patrolling the streets below him. So I love the new designs. I love the jets, especially that whole jet cycle battle. I don't really
amazing.
know what to say, but the
Like,
final,
the
final
light jet, yeah.
light jet battle, where it's light cycles but in 3D, air space, and they're doing corkscrew maneuvers and stuff. Oh, so good.
Tail, just so awesome. And Sam's badass turret gun thing.
Which once again, Star Wars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Star Wars, very Star Wars, but also very very video gamey.
Yeah.
And love the design of Clue's cruiser, because it's like Sark's cruiser, but like 4 times as big.
Yeah, the throne ship even.
The little throne ship, but then the bigger cruiser with the offset side bit that's like Sark's cruiser.
Yeah. So once again, you've got to get to the giant light tower.
Beam of light.
Giant beam of light. But I think it makes more sense in this one than it did in the first movie. It is very clearly the last bit of the laser beam before it shuts off.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think makes a lot more sense than in the first movie. I really do like that. I know, Adam, that you had talked about, I would say that it has a plot, and we kind of did play up for comedic effect that this movie has no plot. But I think when you compare these two movies, this one is much more cohesive and much better at world building for people who are not as obsessive nerds as we are.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's far more conventional plot in Legacy, I think.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that once we're in the grid, we stay in the grid. We don't jump back between the computer world and the real world like the original film did.
Yeah, and that
it's a more linear story that way.
Yeah, and also that the beginning of the film in the real world very directly sets up the plot in the grid, which I do not feel the first film did as well. I mean, it did some, but I do not feel it did it as well or as seamlessly. So I love that once again we're headed back to the big beam of light in the sky, but that it makes a little bit better sense, and also why the disc is important is a little bit more clear.
Yeah, this is Flynn's disc, so the way home, because if you have Flynn's disc, you will recognize it as Flynn, so you could be turned human, I guess.
Yeah, he's got the code that lets you reconstitute matter from nothing somehow.
Yeah, that is the one thing at the end of the movie is like, where exactly did the matter to make up Cora come from?
Well, and
in the laser?
Clue's trying to do that with like tens of thousands of troops.
Is this like a replicator in Star Trek where there's just kind of like vague atoms in a bunker somewhere waiting to be constituted into a new shape?
Also, is Clue trying to fly his whole ship through the portal?
Yeah,
Like, is a
He's
giant
fine.
ship just going to burst out of Flynn's arcade in the middle of the night? And
A very Avengers Endgame with Thanos' ship just busting through of the Avengers campus.
yeah, that does seem to be a precursor. Yeah. I'm not sure that Clue actually has a full grasp of what it takes to get to the real world. I think he just knows Flynn travels easily through it. I'm not sure he actually understands the mechanics. I find it very childlike in what Clue is planning to do.
You can do it, so I can do it too.
Well, if Dad can just get in a car and drive it wherever, then 5-year-old me can get in a car and go to the ice cream store. It's like,
yeah. And clearly there's something to it because Cora does wind up in the real world.
Yeah, but that's a 1-1 situation. This is,
Yeah.
Or I mean, the general idea that I've gotten from the movie was, Clue says he's going to bring all of his troops. Clue said he's going to free everyone, but he could just be in it for himself, just to get himself into the real world.
that is a good point. That it's basically like, we're all gonna be in this together, and then at the end it's like, nope, it was a one-way trip. It's just me. Bye. Here's the thing that I didn't think about. Is Cora now made up of the digitized bits of Flynn? Because it would have had to have taken Flynn's matter and stored it, theoretically, to send him to the digital world. Is that why it worked with Cora and it may not have worked for anything else? So Cora or Clue, one other program, could have maybe used Flynn's, and maybe that's why Flynn sacrificed himself instead of going. Maybe he knew that the only way Cora would be reconstituted is by using his stored matter.
Well, that was never. I mean, that was not even Sam's plan. Sam's plan was to get himself and his father out. Cora just happened to.
No, but I mean, why Kevin Flynn? Because Kevin Flynn immediately goes, "Take Cora. You go to the light with her. You get out with her. I'm staying here to fight Clue." He had a moment where he could have gone with them.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment he could have escaped, and instead he stayed behind. Now, theoretically, to distract Clue, but maybe he also knew that the laser only had a stored matter pattern for one person.
Possible.
That makes perfect sense, and that raises the question, if Clue had attempted to bring his whole army through, would they have just come out really tiny?
Action figure size.
It's like, well, we're here, but we're in action figure form.
And due to a miscalculation of scale, the entire army was swallowed by a small dog.
Yes, exactly.
Clue just becomes Toy Story.
There's your super nerdy reference in the middle of our nerdy Tron discussion. But yeah, so that has been my theory, that it had stored for all these years Flynn's matter signature, which was enough for like one adult humanoid.
I'd never thought of that before, but that makes really, really great sense.
So it does wonder, I don't think Clue would have been able to get his army, even if that was his plan, because I do think Tuesday might be right on that it was like, no, it's just me. You fought to get me here, and now I'm going to get all the prize, because that also seems like a very fascist dictator thing to do.
And he could probably do it and pose as Flynn.
Yeah, and that would have been the really terrifying thing, is if he shows up, he would have showed up in Flynn's body, because he also has the mental image of himself looking like Flynn. And he would have very easily been able to just be like, hey, I'm Kevin Flynn, I'm back. I'm taking over my company now, and I'm going to do horrible things with that power and money.
And, a billionaire with a bad agenda can do a lot of bad things.
Oh, yeah.
You don't say.
I'm not referring to anything in particular at the moment, but, just theoretically.
So I do think that it's interesting that now we have Again, kind of like the first movie, I'm not sure that I like the idea that it's predicated on, the billionaire's going to save the world. Maybe Korra will have some mitigating impact on what that generally means in the real world.
We'll never know, unfortunately.
Yeah, now it's looking like maybe we will never know.
Unless there's some sort of book or other written version of it.
The thing is that I also had another little theory about this, which is that maybe his idea was to use her knowledge of the grid to help recreate the, let's call it the primordial ooze that birthed the ISOs in the first place.
Possible.
Like a new grid type system without some kind of overarching thing like Clue or the MCP that is just there to let bits of code combine and see what it would be like.
And with enough iterations, it could probably happen again.
Yeah, it seems like, that this was birthed from the early bits of AI that they were already working with. So why not, if that happened in the late 80s, early 90s, kind of as it suggests, what is it, like 89 he's supposed to have disappeared?
Yeah.
So if this happened between 82 and 89 with the technology we see in the original Tron, 2010's technology with this same kind of overlay of, slightly more futuristic on top of it, could probably birth these things in nanoseconds real time.
Yeah.
It's even implied, with Korra, at least from the ISOs able to regenerate themselves, which none of the other programs can do. It's a possibility that Kevin Flynn wanted Korra out there to probably adapt that to humanity, maybe.
But also, think about it. What we're doing in the real world now is that we're giving these artificial intelligence programs that we have created things like, using extra processing power to try to decode the human genome. Mm-hmm. Using things to try to come up with theoretical cancer treatments.
The entire point here is that improving the human condition is what Kevin says in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, and so I think that the miracle of the ISOs is not necessarily that they're spontaneously generated programs, but we see it in Korra. He makes a joke. Sam makes a joke about, a little light reading. She is an information sponge that loves to learn and loves to output new things. Now, if you gave her all the medical information we have on humanity, what could a program like that do? If we gave, astrophysics or something, or rocket science, could we then have better space program? Could we have faster communication abilities? Could we figure out how to get that laser to digitize me and send me to Hawaii?
Yeah. That's. Like I said, imagine what they could have done with a teleportation machine. Would have put all the airlines out of business.
And I think that sort of transportation technology is only limited by network speed in the way that it's portrayed here in the movie. And,
which
and
means
how many petabytes is a human?
Yeah. But
I could send you to Hawaii,
without humans. Even without humans, can you imagine? Can you imagine Amazon delivery with that system? We've got 1 day Amazon shipping now. Some of the big cities have within a couple of hours.
1 minute delivery.
Yeah, you could have 20-second delivery of, not, just inanimate objects. simple things. It might be more difficult to do, a human or whatever, but simple structures seem to be, I mean, they already figured it out on oranges and stuff. Can you imagine how quickly and fresh you could get produce to all the food deserts in the world with that system?
And if it could somehow create matter from nothing, as is implied by Clue's army, maybe it could be the key to a post-scarcity world.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of sad that they never really followed that train of thought to a more interesting conclusion. The thing is I think the world of Tron is endlessly fascinating, but I think it's one of those worlds that it's not quite as fascinating within the media we are given. I think it's more fascinating in the thoughts that it sparks outside the media in conversations like this.
Yes.
Which I think is why it hasn't caught on more in the larger world. At like something like Star Wars or a Harry Potter or something. These are worlds with all these kind of infinite possibilities, but their creators like overdid it to a certain extent and gave us a little too much, maybe. I think the problem with Tron is that it gave us a little too little. It's a build your own fandom kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's from the beginning, even the original Tron is a fairly philosophical movie among all the weirdness and stuff, and philosophy doesn't really entice a lot of people.
I would disagree with that today. I think in 1982, in an hour and a half movie or whatever, I think you're right. But look at something like Westworld now.
Or The Good Place.
Or The Good Place, yes. Or even, even something like Game of Thrones started out very philosophical and then lost its way. Lost tried to be and then kind of, bottomed out. But I think that now, and in the medium of television, I think that's the other problem. We are into philosophical, world-buildy, very strange things right now.
A lot of high concept going on right now.
Yeah. And I think the problem is that this came out at the wrong time for that. That's what makes me so sad about that news today about there could have been a TV series. Because I think this is the point when that TV series could make everybody a Tron fan.
And, Tron, the original Tron also came out at a very unfortunate time. Because I think it would have done better had it not been released in the same summer as Wrath of Khan. There's a whole bunch of other movies that were released that summer. The biggest one, I think, is Wrath of Khan, but also... oh, crap, I had this whole list in my head earlier today. But there was a whole bunch of other, like, zeitgeist movies at the time that have lasted since then. And Tron, I think, just got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and Wrath of Khan is a very philosophical movie too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's extremely deep. And so I think audiences can be into it when presented, but I think, like I said last week, I think the problem with this is it didn't explain enough to the casual viewer. It really wanted you to do your own homework, and I don't think film audiences are as into that as like high concept television audiences are now.
Yeah. Okay, here's what came out around Tron. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Conan the Barbarian. It was a packed summer in film that year.
Yeah. So, maybe Disney will do the right thing. Disney, if you're listening, which you're not, I really do think that this could be, something like Westworld. Maybe not quite that big, but there's a lot of good philosophy here. There's a lot of good concept. There is a world that is begging you to build it more. if you listened to last week's show, you're now hearing how much more interested and kinder we are to this, which tried to build the world of the grid more, I think, than the original film took its time to do. This is also a longer film, so there was a little bit of breathing.
2 hours plus, yeah.
But I think that this is a property that's still waiting to get its full due. And I really hope it does. I really hope that maybe, the new ride, Disney Plus being out there where people can just run across these movies, and the TV series. But I desperately want to see more from this world.
There's so many stories you can tell in this world. These are stories that likely will never be told, and it's just they need a way to tell them that can be easily digested by the audience.
Yeah, and also I think it would be interesting to find out what humanity would do if they found out the grid exists.
Yeah.
And I think it is a concept that...
The story wasn't just a video game, it was things that really happened to him.
Can you imagine, let's say 2020, people, MCOM now releases virtual reality Tron, and people are putting VR headsets on, and they're going into the grid that way. Very much like Ready Player One, in a way.
But better and less weirdly problematic.
Yes.
Less of a man-child fantasy.
And fewer just weird cultural references for no reason.
Yeah, I kind of like that the world of Tron is almost entirely bereft of outside real-world references. Not entirely, of course, because the users will program things into programs that, make them happy, but...
And at some point, Flynn was a fan of Daft Punk, it seems.
Which is weird, because he got digitized before Daft Punk. Does that mean that Daft Punk escaped the grid?
Maybe.
No, Clue blew up Daft Punk.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's that one scene where Sam is filling in Kevin on the advancements of technology in the 20 years he's been in the grid. He said, I thought all of that up in 85. He's like, maybe
with Wi-Fi.
Maybe he thought Daft Punk up.
He thought of techno music in 1985 but couldn't find a way to market it.
I had this idea for EDM, but nobody was into it yet because there wasn't ecstasy. So have we kind of exhausted the idea of Tron Legacy here for the moment?
Yeah, we've been talking about as long as the movie exists. We've been talking for the same length of the movie. I think we said everything we can say about this movie.
We did.
As we always say,
one of my favorite parts.
Please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Flynn, I love Flynn's apartment. That's all. Just his little overlooking the grid. I love the design of it because it's very very classic, but also well within the Tron aesthetic. It's very well art directed, I think.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that the costume designers did even better. They worked so hard to make sure that seams in the costumes didn't show. They put actual LEDs into the suits this time because that is a technology we have now. And I want Flynn's hoodie robe thing.
With the light inside the hood?
With the light inside the hood and the inside of the lining of the coat.
The black version or the white version?
I need that like burning. Oh my god, I would wear that everywhere.
The black version is so badass.
It is so good.
When Flynn shows up in the end of Line Club, just crouching down, and everything goes silent, and he looks up. Oh.
Yeah, everything about
so
that,
good.
I want that. I want that so bad right now. Please make me one in my size. I will wear it everywhere. So here's the question, and I'll put it to Adam first as our special guest. Is there still magic here?
Absolutely. When I rewatched this in preparation for this, I tried to take notes, but I just found myself getting sucked into the movie because I just, from top to bottom, I think it's a really well-made film. There's a few problems with it, but I mean, overall, it's just it keeps your attention.
Tuesday?
I'm going to say yes. I actually enjoyed Legacy more than I enjoyed watching the original Tron.
Yeah, original Tron has that nostalgia feel for those of us who grew up with it at some point in our lives. But this is just a good, fun movie to watch. And it is gorgeous. Have I mentioned that yet? Because gorgeous.
And Legacy benefits from everything we've learned about pacing in films since 1982.
Yeah.
That too. So, yes, Tron Legacy, absolutely. If you watched the original Tron but you never got around to this, you are doing yourself a disservice. Please go watch it right now.
And I would say, even if you've never seen the original Tron, you can still watch this movie and still enjoy it and get the gist of what's going on.
Yeah, Tron Legacy works really well as a standalone.
Yeah, they give you enough backstory in the beginning in the scene with young Flynn that you kind of understand what's going on, even if you haven't seen the original film. So definitely watch this. Maybe one day we'll get to Tron Uprising, but I do not think that will be next week because we're going to do something special. We're going to have guest request. Our guest gets to make a request, and we're going to do it. So, Adam, what are we going to do next week?
Oh, I didn't know I was going to have responsibility. Well, here's one of my favorite Disney movies. It is National Geographic's Journey to Shark Eden. It's a wonderful nature documentary about sharks and how they live in the ocean. And
a nature documentary.
Yeah, sure, why not?
You want to do a podcast about a nature documentary?
Okay, I mean, maybe not.
I mean,
not against it, and not against the idea.
We're not really sciencey people necessarily.
Okay, fine. Then how about this? It's the tale of a neuroatypical little girl and her weird pet from another planet. How about Lilo and Stitch?
Ooh.
That's actually one of my favorite Disney movies, and I would love to watch this for the show. What about you, Kiki?
You're not gonna like me, but I've never actually seen Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, there's a first time for everything.
Yeah, sure. I would love to watch this for the first time and let you know how that goes. So maybe next week we're not both of us re-watching the magic. Maybe we're living the magic for the first time, or at least I am, because I'm weird and I missed that part of Disney. Sorry.
Well.
So we would very much like to thank Adam for being our guest. This has been super great fun. Adam, do you want to plug anything or tell people where they might find you?
Sure. I have had a blast, first of all. I really enjoyed this, and thank you for letting me join you. I had a really great time. You can find me on the various social medias. Just search for Adam Liebreich-Johnsen, or on Twitter I am Big Bass Bone. Same thing on Instagram, but I hardly use either of them except to yell at politicians. I sing in a very raunchy body folk band called the Poxy Boggards. You can find us performing this spring at the original Southern California Renaissance Pleasure Fair in Irwindale, California. And we'll be doing a special post-St. Patrick's Day show the Saturday after St. Patrick's Day, which is, I believe, the 21st of March. I should have had this ready, and that will be at Callahan's Irish Pub in Irwindale, California. You can search for more about us at poxyboggards.com. That's POXYBOGGARDS.com. Or find us on Facebook. Just search for The Poxy Boggards, because that's more up to date than the website, because who updates a website anymore?
It's all about the Facebooks. Again, thank you so much. This has been awesome. You have been an excellent first guest for us. Well, Tuesday, I think it's that time.
Yep, so next week, Lilo and Stitch. And again, if you have not seen this movie before, go see it. It's good. Give it a chance.
It's real good.
Uncanny Valley CGI, Jeff Bridges aside.
Yeah. Get past that, and the rest of it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I guess that's all we have to say about that. And thanks for listening. And goodbye, programs. End of line.
End of
End
line.
of line.
Thank you for listening to Rewatching the Magic. We invite you to keep the magic going by joining the conversation online. Find us on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic, on Twitter at Rewatch the Magic, and of course, find all new episodes at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Until next time, remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it.